Well, Bahraini authorities have banned all protest gatherings amid escalating clashes in the Gulf Kingdom. It's the most sweeping attempt so far to quash anti-regime protests that have been going on in the country for nearly 2 years. The restrictions come after the country's police reportedly attacked anti-monarchy protesters with tear gas and rubber bullets in the capital Manama on Monday. Clashes in Bahrain occur almost daily, with around 80 people being killed since the unrest began. The country's under fire from human rights groups for its brutal crackdowns on pro-reform campaigners who are calling for more rights, jobs and education. Let's get more on this now from political analyst Sriram Chawulia. Thanks so much for joining RT today. Now, tell us, this is not the first crackdown on the protest movement in Bahrain, and authorities banned demos in the country before. But what is so special about this one?
Well, it's a resort to martial law tactics that have been practiced before. It's an attempt to completely squelch and squash people's uprising. In fact, Bahrain can be called the unfinished segment of the Arab Spring, which has never been allowed to even flower. So Bahrain, there's been a concert of conservative powers in the region, as well as the pro-Western states and the Western patrons who have tried to completely demolish the voice of the people. And what you see in the form of these crackdowns by the state are just manifestations of this larger counter-revolutionary trend, which has tried to stem the flow of the Arab Spring.
How tough do you think it will be for the opposition now to voice their views, considering these new state of emergency-style rules?
Well, they have some safety valves in the form of a so-called elected parliament, which is supposed to be the legitimate avenue where people can express the grievances. But the fact is that these parliaments have mostly been rigged and set up to endorse and sugarcoat monarchical rule. Is the same in Kuwait, is the same in Bahrain, is the same in most of these countries, even Jordan. So these parliaments are not helping. And I think these restrictions are meant to also send a message to the Shia minorities in Saudi Arabia, who in turn revolted after the Shia in Bahrain rose up against the Khalifa family. So what you have is a regional setup which is not allowing free expression. And then why is, for example, Syria such a hotspot and Bahrain not? This is the original sin of the whole Arab Spring narrative, and we have not been able to overcome these double standards. Just because Bahrain hosts the 5th fleet of the US Navy does not entitle it to be so brutal and repressive and get away with crimes against humanity, which are happening.
Sriram, how united is the Bahraini protest movement? I mean, after all, the authorities have not been able to crush it for 20 months now.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I would say compared to the engineered revolts like you had in Libya and what you have in Syria, which are orchestrated from outside, I think the Bahraini movement is much more like the Egyptian people's movement. It's actually an indigenous movement. There is no proof of Iran's involvement or stoking the Bahraini struggle as the Saudis and the Bahraini monarchy have been alleging. I mean, this is really an indigenous movement. It's based upon a form of minority rule where, which is similar to what happened in Iraq when Saddam Hussein was in power. So we need to, think about legitimacy and illegitimacy. Why are some regimes being artificially overthrown to foreign help while others are being propped up like Bahrain? I mean, this has to do with the fact that, whether you're pro-Western or not really seems to matter whether you deserve freedom or not.
Now, a lot of prominent Bahraini activists sit in jail, including Nabil Rajab, who's now serving 3 years for tweeting and participating in illegal gatherings. Do you see their fate changing now as well?
The region has to evolve. I mean, as you know, the Arab Spring is now more than a year old, and there have been many diversions. There should have been a focus on Bahrain, an intense international as well as regional focus on Bahrain, which has not happened. There is a conspiracy of silence around Bahrain. Barring a few critical news reports, not much is being allowed to be covered about the injustices of the people of Bahrain. So they will, struggle, they will strive, and, eventually the fate of all these monarchies are tied to each other. if Kuwait, Saudi Arabia continue to, and Jordan continue to remain in the saddle, the monarchical regimes, then they will also prop up the one in Bahrain using the Gulf Cooperation Council and other regional mechanisms. So really, it's a question of whether you want complete freedom in the region, whether you want a genuine Arab Spring, and if so, Bahrain is integral to it. In fact, I would say Bahrain is the starting point because their protests were the most original and the purest of all, and there can be no misconception that this is some kind of an outside, fueled by outside powers. This is really the voice of the people, and I hope that it comes out, and I hope that they struggle and they keep on going this way, because that is all they have right now against the array of conservative forces which are trying to suppress them.
Now, what about the U.S.? With Washington backing Bahraini rulers, how much influence does America actually have there?
Oh, certainly they do. I think, I would say that after Saudi Arabia, if there is a regime that they fear will collapse, it's the one in Bahrain, because of its strategic location and because of the presence of the US military there, and they have a big base. So for their ability to project power in the region, Bahrain is so central. And therefore, you barely hear a whimper in the US about human rights abuses in Bahrain. So here you have a clear mismatch between America's ideals of espousing universal human rights and the reality on the ground, where human rights are selectively being enforced and are being used to topple regimes for political and ulterior motives.
All right, insight and analysis on the escalating clashes in Bahrain. Political analyst Sriram Chaulia, thank you.